I'm the first one to tell you that I am horrible at building a brand or thinking about the brand, but I'm one of those, great people who can be sitting up in the stands and go, oh, that's an awful brand, right? Like, but, and I don't know why, and I can't quantify it, and I can't, whatever. So what I do is I lean into folks who are way smarter than me and way better at those things. I mean, let's be honest, like, we started a company called Airship, for God's sakes. Like, that doesn't exactly roll off your tongue, and the story around how we came up with the name is even crazier.
Hi, my name is Courtney, and welcome to How They Scaled It, where scaling is done with both sides of the brain. Today, I'm excited to welcome Scott Kveton, a serial entrepreneur and the co-founder and CEO of CaseMark. Scott's career has taken him from working on the Y2K team at Amazon to launching and scaling multiple tech startups, most notably Airship, which helped pioneer mobile push notifications. Now, he's tackling one of the biggest opportunities in legal tech with CaseMark, an AI-driven platform that's helping attorneys process cases more efficiently and at scale. Scott, it is such an honor to have you here today. Welcome to How They Scaled It.
You are far too kind. Thanks so much for having me, Courtney. I apprappreciate it.
Amazing.
It's a great intro, I feel like we're done. We're done here.
I know. Well, you have such a good story, so it's kind of fun to summarize it. But that kind of like leads me to my first question, which is your career has been so diverse. Like you've been kind of all over the place. You've done open source projects, B2B, SaaS, and now you're finally in legal tech. So what is driving those decisions to kind of like bounce around, or like how do you decide when to start something new?
It's funny because I think like a lot of entrepreneurs, you don't necessarily pick what you're going to do. It sort of picks you. I do a lot of things in my life in threes. And sort of what I mean there is, you can sort of wrap your mind around three things at once. Like I'm a fan of, building companies, signing customers, building product in a crawl, walk, run fashion. And then when I start companies, there's sort of three things that are critical to it, team, tech, and timing. Team and tech are relatively simple, especially, I've got a co-founder that I've worked with now for close to 15 years. And so the team and tech is easy. Timing is always the really tricky bit. And so we got really lucky with Airship with basically the launch of the iPhone. And then, I sort of equivocate it with what's happening in legal is kind of the iPhone moment with respect to AI in legal. And so kind of leaning into that a little bit. And so, in terms of how I pick it, it's really just following the path of what's interesting, knowing you start with some little simple product, ship it as quickly as possible, and then just iterate based on customer feedback. And then, you sort of, drown out the noise that you hear from investors who don't get it, or, the customers who maybe aren't the right ones at that time, those kinds of things. So, it's really just, I hate to say it, but it's following your gut a little bit.
Yeah.
And I think the longer I've done this, I think that the more trust I put in my gut, and I think it's gotten a lot better for sure.
Yeah, so. That's interesting. I feel like that's been one of my biggest learnings too, is that like your gut actually is a really good guide sometimes. And every mistake I've made, I've always thought back, like I did have a gut feeling about this and I still moved forward because it made the most sense, or I had someone giving me bad advice. But that gut feeling is like, it's so important. And I think that just over time it gets more and more strong, and it just like guides you even better and better. So it seems like it worked out for you.
I'll never forget back in, I think it was probably 2009, we had just started Airship. It was still really new. And I had gone and pitched an investor, and he brought me in for the partner meeting, which is, traditionally a pretty formal meeting. You're usually meeting with the whole partnership. You've got a slide deck. You're going through all these things. And they ask you the typical questions around, problem, solution, TAM, team, like all these things. Yeah. And I remember I put up a slide on the TAM, and I said, again, the paint wasn't even dry on the company yet. I mean, we were maybe 4 months old. And I had said that the TAM for the push notification market in the next 5 years would be like $1.2 billion or something like that. And I'll never forget, as he walked me out of the meeting and took me to sort of walk me to the elevator to leave, he's like, I'm just going to give you a little bit of advice. Don't ever embarrass somebody like that with a TAM, like that. There's no way your TAM's ever going to be that big. That is absolutely crazy. And I was like, oh my God. So, and I left just defeated, thinking like, I am a moron.
No.
And I was a moron because
Right.
Guess what? The TAM was 5x that by that time. And so what I didn't do is I didn't trust my gut and just sort of ignore that investor. And I think the other thing too is I've heard no so many times in my career that
Yeah.
it's like, okay, great. Just get to know quickly with me. That way I can move on to the next person who
Yeah.
probably gets it. And, when you do find those folks who say yes, it tends to be, it's not just because they get sort of what you're doing from a company or from a product perspective. They also get you as an
Yeah.
entrepreneur and that you don't have all the answers, but that you probably are going to figure it out because you can pattern match against sort of history and how you're going to build your company moving forward. So, anyways,
Yeah.
yeah,
No, no, that's great. I also you mentioned so team, timing, and tech. Those are
yeah,
like the main three. And you said that team and tech are the easiest. Has that always been the case? Because I feel like a lot of entrepreneurs when they're first getting started have a really hard time building their team or like knowing what to look for, knowing when to hire, when to fire. Has that
yeah.
changed
I
for
mean,
you?
I think the reason I think it's easy for me is I've been lucky enough to have a co-founder for the last,
Yeah.
God knows how long. And so when it comes to the technology and the team, we've always sort of resonated. I think the other piece is I have a technical background. I
Yeah.
did, cut my teeth at Amazon at the turn of the century, and I was on the Y2K team. I was literally like a system administrator in the data centers, like, literally shoving machines into racks and stuff like
Yeah.
that. So I have a little bit of a technical background. I used to write software. I actually still have an open source project that
hmm
is still alive. I haven't written against it since literally the 90s, but I just discovered that it's still out there. It's called Apache, and it's this open source platform for basically hosting your own music. So like if you
hmm
have your own music and you want to sort of put it somewhere and then be able to get to it from anywhere, you can do that anyways.
Yeah.
But I thought it was really funny that project still exists.
Yeah.
So anyways, yeah.
I mean, okay, so as you kind of like have gone through your career, it seems like Urban Airship was kind of this huge, huge success for you. And you scaled it to 50 million ARR, which is very impressive, and with a brand new thing that people had never really even thought of. So, as you were going through that process, what were some of those biggest like lessons that you were learning and the experience that now you're bringing to your other companies like CaseMark?
Yeah, I mean, I think hindsight's always 2020 in these things, but
Yeah.
looking back, I mean, Urban Airship was one of those things that we literally launched it. We had the idea for the company and then went live with the product in 30 days. And, again, it was a timing thing. Steve Jobs had announced, or Apple was announcing basically that they were going to do these push notifications. It wasn't public. You were under NDA as a developer if you knew about it, and we happened to be under
hmm
NDA to know about it. And I had actually gone down and done this, kind of cheesy campaign where I went out in front of Moscone Center and gave out a bunch of donuts and danishes to people because I didn't know how I was going to launch the company anyways, and everybody was
Right.
standing there in line to go into the Steve note, the keynote address that they did, and we got really lucky on it because normally they in June they announce a bunch of new features and things and then they launch them in September. And instead of saying, "Oh, this is going to be live in September," it was like, "No, no, this is going to be live in 7 days." And so we had a bunch of competitors who had announced they had big parties, they
Mhm.
had all these things happening that week at this event. The one difference is they all had these beautiful websites that were, brilliantly designed and great stories and all these things, but they just had to enter your email when this, and we'll let you know when it's available. You can come to our site and download the
Just get it.
SDK. You can get up and running. And we literally had a 90-day window where we were the only game in town, maybe
Wow.
60 days. And it's how we basically won the market. And then it was just, we were kind of off to the races. And then I learned quite a bit. We failed at fundraising a couple times and then we
Mhm.
finally hit. All it takes is that one yes, by the way, to make you sound like you're a genius.
Yeah.
And we had some great investors early on, and then it just sort of snowballed from there. And, again, looking back on it, you don't really realize how much of it was just like we had the tiger by the tail and we were
hmm
holding on more than us being brilliant about like what we were doing from a go-to-market perspective. And again, hindsight being 2020, I'll never forget sitting down with Jeff Lawson, who was the CEO of Twilio and grew that to almost an $80
Yeah.
billion company. And I sat down with him when we were kind of peers at the time, and he's like, "Well, we're doing SMS, you're doing push notifications. It seems like we should put our two companies together." And I'm like, "Jeff, let me tell you, you're doing old school stuff. We're doing the new stuff. We're gonna, and sure enough, he was way more prescient than I ever was. The thing that stuck to me that I still to this day will never forget is he said, I said, well, SMS is going to be kind of a dying, way to send messages. Push notifications are, such a much more, brilliant and elegant way to do this. And he's like, yeah, SMS may go away, but man, I'm making half a penny all the way down to the bottom. And I was like, for every message that they send.
Yeah.
And when you do the math on it, he was able to grow his top line revenue, even if his margins weren't killer. It didn't matter. That
Right.
allowed him to then, raise money and grow the business so that he could consolidate. And guess what? They got into push notifications. They did all those things too. And so, again, you kind of learn those things as you go. But never a dull moment. So anyways,
Yeah.
and we're seeing the same thing with CaseMark now. Like it's this, we really feel like we have the tiger by the tail
Yeah.
on this, and it's been a wild ride already, and we're barely, again, the paint's barely dry on this thing. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, also sounds like you're one thing that you have been really consistently is just scrappy. Just like do it, get it done. Like we don't need like a big fancy website. We need people to be able to use the product, and that focus on tech and like the product. It seems like a very product first orientation with your company. Which seems to have paid off pretty well for you. And what an exciting time to be like during these iPhone releases. And you're like, yeah, we'll do all the push notifications, and that must have been so exciting.
Yeah, it was that was really fun. I mean, that was such a crazy time, and every new release of iOS that came out, we were like crossing our fingers that we weren't going to be
Yeah.
obsolete, because like Apple, because that was always a concern from investors, is that Apple will just launch something that does this,
Right.
and thankfully they never did, because they said no, we're in this sort of the network layer of this thing.
Hmm.
We're going to let people build services on top of that, and so we got really lucky in that sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, same thing's kind of true, here, what's happening with AI and legal tech too.
Yeah.
So
So you've sold a couple of different companies across a couple of different industries. So what made you decide that legal tech was the next frontier? Sounds like partially gut, but was there another thing that was telling you this is
oh
the
yeah, I
direction
mean,
you
of
should go?
course, yeah. And again, leave it to me. Every time I start a new company, I do it in a new vertical, which
Yeah.
means none of the network effects that I've built up with the networks that I've built in. But at the same time, I think I enjoy
Mhm.
disruptive technologies that are changing, industries, or remaking things. And to me, it's that disruption, or that technology shift that is exciting, and it also just creates such huge opportunities. But the reason we picked legal tech is really, really simple. It's because I'm married to an attorney. My wife is an insurance defense attorney here in Oregon. She runs a practice, they do Oregon, Washington,
Mhm.
and Idaho. So think like, she's got big retailers, and she's got, like Uber is one of her big
Yeah.
customer, or one of her big clients, and all that kind of stuff. So, she kind of jokingly said to us, hey, if you're going to start something new, why don't you solve medical chronologies? And it's a hard problem, in the sense that you get this big pile of medical records, and you have somebody who's suing you for potentially millions of dollars, and you need to make sense of that. So now they usually, what they do is, by hand, they'll have an associate or a paralegal go through and sort all those and organize them,
Mhm.
and then you have basically this work product that's a Word document that tells you, here's the day by day, what the treatment they had, not only before any incident, but like after, ongoing, all that. And that can take like weeks to do.
Yeah.
I've seen some medcrons that people have invested close to 3, 4, 5 months, and tens of thousands of dollars, if not more, of
Mhm.
paralegal time to do it. And so that was a big problem for us to kind of tackle. So instead, what we did is we started with simpler solutions, like
Mhm.
deposition summaries, trial, hearing, and arbitration summaries, tax return summaries, police report summaries, those kinds of things. Again, really being work product driven, because in this early stage, we knew that attorneys always have a hard time adopting technology. We've got 30 years
Yeah.
of lack of technology adoption to show that.
Yes.
So how can we just make it ridiculously drop dead simple? And again, do this crawl, walk, run into what will ultimately be full case automation for us. And starting with the easy buttons was a great way to do it. In other words, they know how to upload a file, they know how to hit a button, and they understand work product that is in a format that they are used to using. So let's start there. And that's kind of where that was the seed for it. We started that in June of 2023, and then really kind of hit our stride last year, about this time, actually, about April. And that's when we raised our pre-seed round from Gradient, Cambrian, and a couple other
Mhm.
angels, and then we've just been kind of off to the races ever since. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so your approach was not, I'm going to solve this entire problem because I'm not going to solve every single element of this, but you kind of just picked like one or two things and then started gaining trust with lawyers and getting feedback. So, like you said, just pick like one small problem and fix it well. Is that kind of the approach that you've been taking?
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's always a good way to approach it. I think the other thing that happens in these disruptive technology times, I mean, I think Bill Gates kind of said it best, which is, anytime there's a disruptive technology, no matter the vertical, we overestimate what will happen in the first 2 years, and we underestimate what will happen in 10 years.
Mhm.
And so I think that's no more true than in legal tech. And everybody's been saying, "Wow, AI is going to like replace all these attorneys and do it," and it hasn't yet. What we're realizing is, wow, this is actually a great tool that augments what you do. It's not about reducing headcount or lowering the
Mhm.
billable hour or reducing your total billables. Really, what it is how can you remove or reduce the tedium? How can you make it so that the backbone of these firms, the paralegals, the associates, the junior partners, how can you make it so those folks are moving to kind of this air traffic controller role? Where they can manage instead of 60 or 75 cases, let's get them to 300 cases, but still give them this ability to like drive down from a granularity, perspective to generate work product. Because so many of these AI solutions are kind of opaque. It's like, yeah, upload your files, and then like if you can navigate this complex, beautiful product, you might be able to do something with it. But you have to learn all those things. And instead, we said, no, let's solve from a work product standpoint and work our way up from there, and then ideally have this be a tool that makes it ridiculously easy for folks to handle more cases. Because the one thing that isn't covered in the mainstream media is about AI is I actually think it's going to increase the amount of litigation.
Yeah.
It's so much easier for plaintiffs to be able to just ingest a bunch of
Yeah.
data, spit out a demand letter, and then fire it off than it was, even 2 years ago. And what that means is there's going to be an increase in the amount of litigation out there. So if you're on the defense side, you're going to have solutions for doing that. And the way we see ourselves is we're kind of arming both sides in this.
Mhm.
It's sort of like way back in the day, and I'm dating myself, but the same company that made the radar guns for police also made radar detectors for consumers.
Yeah.
Like, duh, right? So,
Right.
so that was, we're kind of doing the same thing here for folks.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's been good.
Interesting. Well, so in addition to like, you're making these paralegals like air traffic controllers, I feel like this also is probably reducing the human error, because if you're just having someone like go through all of this information and then like translate it into a Word doc, there's no way that that's like 100% accurate all the time. So I imagine that's also really helpful for these like attorneys and lawyers that you're working with. But I also want to point out like how smart it is to start with like something very simple and easy, because legal tech or the legal industry is so slow to adopt technology. It's almost kind of like giving them just dip your toe and try this one little thing and see
Yeah.
how it works, and then start to believe in it and see how useful it is before having them like learn an entire platform. Like that's exhausting.
For sure, and I think early on the press kind of seized on some attorneys and some situations where folks had either AI had hallucinated or the attorneys
Right.
had like forgotten to remove simple things like as an AI bot I'm not
Right.
allowed, and that's in a pleading that was submitted to a court. Well, it doesn't matter if AI was involved in that. Those attorneys probably were
Yeah.
doing all kinds of other shady things without AI, right? And
Mhm.
so, that ethical component is critical no matter what. Now, I will say the solution is it's a lot like self-driving cars in the sense that, humans are actually more accident prone than most self-driving cars.
Yeah.
But the story is much more interesting if it's an AI powered car that gets in an accident, unfortunately, right? It just
Right.
is. And so those stories around, bad things happening with AI and legal are definitely there. And again, the way we frame it is we always tell our customers, look, you should still review this. The goal
Yeah.
with this is to create essentially a shortcut or streamline this. And then we give tools to help them trust and then verify the output. In other words,
Mhm.
for an example, if we do a deposition summary, we'll give you this page line output that explains each section that you see, but you have a little link there that allows you to like jump to the actual testimony. So you can
Mhm.
actually see the transcript and say, oh, cool, it actually does match up. That's great. So they'll spot check it and feel much better about it. But giving them that tool allows us to sort of bide our time as the industry really learns to trust these tools as they go through. And again, it doesn't happen overnight. And
Right.
so, to the point that I said before around Jeff Lawson and Twilio and
Hmm.
making money half a penny for every message that is going out of style. Our thought was, well, if work product is going to be a thing of the past, why not make money every single time while we phase it out? And by the way,
Right.
while we're phasing that out, we can ease people into using our solution, this
Hmm.
sort of full case automation component. So again, it's to me, it's about not just solving the how do you get folks to adopt this, but how do you build a proper go-to-market motion such that you can sort of outcompete everybody else in the space? And I think that's another one of the little challenges in the space that folks don't talk about.
Yeah.
It's rarely has anything to do with product,
Right.
because we're
Right.
all working with the same tools. We all have access to the same LLMs.
Right. Right.
So anyway, yeah.
Yeah. So I guess that kind of brings me back to your point about, CaseMark is the iPhone moment for legal. So what do you feel like needs to happen for that to really like take off? Like what are we waiting for? Like, is there a light bulb moment for all these lawyers, or is it a technology thing? What do you think needs to happen?
Honestly, it's just gonna be it's going to take time. It's
Yeah.
literally going to take time for it. These things take a long time to adopt. I mean, it's really interesting because I go and actually do trainings at offices, especially for firms that are, larger firms.
Hmm.
We'll go in and do the training itself, especially if we're close to them or if we're in town. And it's really fascinating to see the paralegals sit in front of a new tool. And then when you see them actually use the tool, you're like, oh, wow, we need to remove more features. And I
Yeah.
literally had a session this morning with my product team and our product designer, talking about how we're going to further simplify what we're building because we need to always make sure that we can surface an easy button. Yes, there's a way to drill down and get more features and
Hmm.
functionality and optionality in there. But really, I got to be able to upload a file, click a button, and get an output. And it's got to be quick and it's got to be understandable, no matter how many of those easy buttons that we have.
Hmm.
And we're now getting to the point where you'll be able to just drag in a file and we'll suggest it because we can look at the file and with a high degree of accuracy, we'll determine, oh, this is a deposition transcript. These are some medical records. These are some billing records. But we can solve that and then just surface the button for them. And now, oh, great, I just hit that button.
Right.
Awesome. And
That's
that's
so
really where it has to be.
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I feel like that it's just the power of editing because in tech you always like, oh, I want to be able to do all these amazing things and to narrow it down to, okay, how will this person actually use this thing? Like let's actually
Yeah.
focus on that. And editing is like the hardest thing I think for especially for like product developers when you want to make the coolest product possible. So that's really neat. And so it's always kind of always update. How often are you updating the product?
Oh, constantly. I mean, we have big release. We have product releases every Tuesday, but then we're continuously iterating it, sort of through our staging infrastructure and getting customers in front of it. And then, just each of the easy buttons themselves are iterating at a different pace.
Yeah.
And then, we have all kinds of different versions of those as well. But I think the way that we've architected the platform allows us to be really nimble in that respect. We can spin up a new easy button really, really fast,
Mhm.
actually. And that's actually been a huge advantage for us. And we have some things coming here, towards the fall that I think are really going to accelerate that. Being able to generate a medical chronology for, 25,000 pages of medical records and do that in under 10 minutes, like
Yeah.
that's a huge game changer for folks. And, it's one that we're super, super excited about, mainly because we have so many that we have to do through, our partners and law firms that are looking to do this, looking to do, thousands of these a month. And so, for us, it's a unique challenge, but it's also one that's shows us that we're on the path towards product market fit.
Yeah. Well, and so you're mostly in personal injury law, and obviously inspired by your wife, which is lovely. But is there any other reason for that focus? Did you just feel like, oh, this has the most opportunity the fastest, or was there something else that kind of drew you there?
No, I think it was really having the subject matter expert as my wife
Hmm.
meant she was able to give us insights into
Yeah.
like specific
Direct
things. And
feedback.
especially when we did our first deposition
Hmm.
summary, she the first couple versions she absolutely eviscerated us on, and rightfully so because they were subpar. And
Hmm.
so once we started to learn from her, that helped us kind of move things forward. And again, there are probably sort of richer paths that we could go down. Some say like just focusing on plaintiffs would make a lot more sense, or in-house corporate counsel. But unless you have that subject matter expert and some path towards, how you can drive momentum, it doesn't matter if you're sort of going after those big pieces. My take is if we can get momentum on the path that we're on, then continue to augment and build the platform for both plaintiff and defense, then we'll start to see overlapping, options for whether it's employment law or real estate or you name it. Like there's a bunch of overlapping things that we can build these easy buttons for that tell that story, and ultimately we'll find that ideal path forward for us. But to me, again, having that that's a team component. Having somebody who's a subject matter expert was just such a huge differentiator for us, and so that's why we followed that for sure.
Yeah, no, I think that's really good advice for anyone building a product for like a very niche area that they might not have direct experience in, is pulling those people in early on so that you get on the right track faster. That seems to have been like pretty impactful for you guys in the way that you develop the product.
Well, yeah, without a doubt. I mean, she's been instrumental in everything we've done, and even the medcrons that we generate now, the medical narratives, those were instrumental based on how she has built them for her and her team. We do those very similarly, and it turns out like a lot of the insurance carriers like that way as well. And so, having those kinds of insight is just so critical in the early stages of a company like this. It's what just helps you get that flywheel going and really, sort of grow the business as fast as you can.
Amazing. Well, so if we look ahead 5 years, which in tech language is like 30 years, I guess, really, where do you see CaseMark going? Like, what do you think is going to happen with CaseMark and like legal tech in general?
I mean, I think in legal tech in general, what we're seeing with AI, and this is, just thinking even more broader than just legal, when AI came out, everybody was like, oh my gosh, let's slap AI on everything, right?
Yeah.
So you've got AI customer support, you've got AI, sales development reps, you've got AI, website builders and all these different things. And that's phase one of this. Phase two to me is realizing, oh, wait a minute, we can collapse some of these operations into a single place now that AI can handle it, because AI is actually a core function. Those other things are just elements of what the core function should do. A great example is one of our friends, Amanda Callow, who runs OneMind. She's got a really killer AI, basically, avatar SDR that allows you to basically mine the long tail of your sales pipeline. So you can now have somebody schedule a call. This AI SDR can answer questions. It's like a person. They can spin up a VM and they can do a demo of the product, the whole 9 yards. And it's for those folks who just, maybe you have 20,000 customers that just doesn't make sense to throw a human at. You can do it that way. And what they're finding is, in addition to closing the sales, they're also finding, oh, I can ask customer, support questions. I can ask about my renewal. I can all these things kind of collapse into this single person or this single sort of technology. And so that's really, really powerful. So I think the same thing is going to happen in legal tech. In other words, today, a lot of people think about it from the technology standpoint. I have file sharing, I have case management, I have time tracking. The attorneys just look at it as, I have a pile of data that involves this case. I need to generate work product, and I need to answer questions, and I need to do it at scale. Go, right? They don't care about it. Where is it? Where's the file sharing? How am I tracking the time? All those things. I mean, obviously they care about tracking the time, but
right.
the point is that AI is going to condense a lot of these things such that I think that you're going to have, or you'll have a player that emerges in this space that'll be, just like when retail, print, TV, movies all sort of digitized, out came an Amazon, a Netflix, those kinds of things. And I think there's an opportunity for that next, I think, a defining company of this category to actually emerge that's in a sort of post-digitized world. And I use the term digitized because legal never really digitized. It's been fighting it tooth and nail for who knows how long. And again, that iPhone moment is AI and its impact on legal, for sure.
Yeah, it's almost like they're just like skipping over to the next, like before they digitize everything, they're just going to go straight to AI, straight to CaseMark. I think that's really interesting, and it's almost like it's too good of a deal for them to pass up. Like it it will improve everything, allow them to take on more. And like you said, that's such a good point about there being more litigation with AI because it's easier to be a plaintiff. So that'll be a really interesting thing to watch
For
out
sure.
for. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
so kind of going back more to like your overall leadership style, because you've built and sold so many successful companies, how has your leadership style evolved since you first started?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think I spent a lot of time trying to figure out how everybody else was doing it and then try to do it like them
Yeah.
versus how do I want to do it, or what do I think is effective, or what do I think resonates with my team. And I think, I'll say because of my experience, not my age, that I've started to refine that more and more. And it's interesting because we just went through this exercise. Instead of doing a mission, vision, and values exercise, we sort of tried something different. So actually, one of our investors gave us the idea and helped us kind of lead through the process. And actually, the result to me was just phenomenal.
Mhm.
And what did we do? We boiled down to basically what we call 3 operating principles. And it's what helps us, build a company that isn't a family, it's a team. In other words, we all depend on each other and we all have to be high performing. Otherwise, we have to make changes, right? Just like
Mhm.
any high performing team. But these concepts around bias towards action, being truly customer first and really passionate about those customers. And so I actually just threw up our new operating principles. I actually did a post about it today on LinkedIn. I'll probably end up on LinkedIn Lunatics or something, but I actually believe it. And, I think the other testament too is, we've got 6 folks of the 15 folks who work here at CaseMark now used to work for me at Urban Airship.
Mhm.
And so to me, it says that I'm doing something right to,
Yeah.
people wanting to work with me again. But I'm always trying to refine that too. It's the same reason that, I have 3 advisors that I check in with, at least on a every other week basis, or, maybe monthly for some of them, but folks that help me stay focused and, in touch with what I'm trying to build here, because it's really easy to get into your own little mind space and think, oh man, I'm brilliant,
Yeah.
and you're just not. You're kind of lucky, and you've got a team that you've
Mhm.
got to kind of shepherd through this thing. And so it's been kind of trying to navigate those things, but getting those operating principles and really focusing on that, I think has been really exciting. And I can't believe I'm saying, wow, this is exciting that we have operating principles,
I
but
know.
it resonates with us because it's so pragmatic, and it's
Yeah.
not like this. I've spent I don't know how many hours trying to think through mission, vision, and values for other companies, trying to like have this epiphany when really we just have a bunch of work to get done.
Yeah.
And, honestly, people want to align on that, and that's okay.
Yeah.
So, I think that's kind of how a little bit about how my sort of leadership styles evolved over time, and it'll continue to evolve for sure.
Yeah. Well, I like that your like mission, vision, values, all that stuff. It works really well for some companies, but I think for high performers, which it sounds like that's like the type of person that you hire, it's like sometimes you need something different. Maybe like that floofy, nice language doesn't really inspire, but if I can like look at these operating principles and customer first, okay, like that is something that I can apply in my job right now. And also that is like a feel good thing to be customer first. Not every company is. So we did a similar thing where we kind of like were really trying to figure out like culture, values, mission, vision, all these different things. We ended up doing even overstatements, which was really helpful because that's how you make your even overs, like
Yep.
pursuing better, even over safe routine. So we always know we want to be pushing for better. You're never going to be punished for pushing for better, learning more. And I think that it's different for each company. So operating principles, that's a good note, probably for a lot of tech companies too.
Well, I mean, honestly, a lot of it is, I do, a bunch of reading on, or listen to podcasts and hear about ways that people are doing things. And I just sort of run it through my own filter. And sometimes I pick up little nuggets here and
Mhm.
there that make a lot of sense for it. And so I try to grab those as best I can and then iterate on them. The bias towards action that we lean into, that actually was something that came from Jacob Kaplan Moss, who was one of the founders of Django, which is a big open source CMS. And that just stuck with both Steven and I, my co-founder. And it's been really good.
So building a product is one thing. That's something that you've proven that you can do very well. But building a brand is a whole other ballgame. And I think this is where a lot of tech companies who are or product focused stumble. How do you think about the branding and the type of content that you should be creating for these companies to have like a really strong go to market strategy?
Yeah, that's interesting. I I'm the first one to tell you that I am horrible at building a brand or thinking about the brand. But I'm one of those, great people who can be sitting up in the stands and go, "Oh, that's an awful brand."
Yeah.
Right? Like, but and I don't know why, and I can't quantify it, and I
Yeah.
can't, whatever. So what I do is I lean into folks who are way smarter than me and way better at those things. I mean, let's be honest. Like, we started a company called Urban Airship, for God's sakes. Like, that doesn't exactly roll off your tongue. And the story around how we came up with the name is even crazier. We basically entered, Airship into a Web 2.0 name generator, and the
Yeah.
domain was available. And we were like, "Oh, that's it. That's the name of the
That's the
company." Or
one.
my co-founder did that. And but I try to lean into folks who are far more sort of brilliant than I am on it. And you can kind of see behind me this longboard that's hanging up on the
Uh-huh.
wall. That's an example of one of the Urban Airship campaigns that we did, and we created these custom branded Urban Airship longboards. And at the time, Urban Airship was, it was still early, push was still early, but mobile was a big deal, and everybody was talking about it. So getting in front of CMOs was actually really hard, and they tended
Yeah.
to be the ones with the buying power. And so my CMO at the time, this guy named Brent Higelke, he came up with this idea of let's do this longboard, and we'll make it custom. We'll build a box for it. We'll put this wrapper on it that says your journey through mobile can be tricky. Let us be your ride. And then you open it up, and there's this really cool little card that says, "Hey, we scheduled a meeting with you next week. We'd love to catch up." Blah blah blah. And I think we did 100 of those to start.
Mhm.
And I think all in the campaign was like $11,000.
Yeah.
And I think it generated over 1 million in ARR for us in the first year. And it was just one of those little things that like was a moment for us.
Mhm.
And then that helped us kind of build this brand around it. And we sort of, did some really fun things with that. And so I just try to lean into those things. And, we knew the term CaseMark itself from a company perspective, we were casemark.ai.
Mhm.
And very quickly we realized, oh, wait a minute, this is going to actually be bigger than AI. And that's why we
Yeah.
went and got the .com. I think the secondary fact is that a lot of a lot of law firm firewalls filter out .ai domains. So
Oh.
having a .com is actually really critical, especially one that isn't hasn't been used as a spam
Yeah.
domain. Anyway, so we ended up doing that. But I mean, to me, it's sort of the point is that we're aspirational about
Mhm.
what we're thinking about this brand. We ultimately want to become a verb as far as attorneys are thinking. In other
Yeah.
words, wow, we got a new matter in. Let's case mark it. And what I
Mhm.
mean there is point us at that folder. We'll surface the transcripts, the pleadings, the medical records, the tax returns, you name it. We'll give you that, set of easy buttons, that a la carte set of easy buttons to generate work product. But we'll also give you that case chronology. We'll identify gaps in discovery and then give you a list of deadlines. Again, that allows these, folks to move into that air traffic controller role. And that's what gets me really, really excited about this. And we're not there yet, but that's the sort of the vision for the business moving forward.
Yeah, amazing. Well, it sounds like you guys, when you approach your branding, it's like thinking a little bit bigger, thinking a little bit farther along. And I love doing kind of unexpected branding moments or marketing moments, like sending a longboard. Like it's just so cool because it's something that they cannot ignore. That's the thing. It's like you have to be unignorable. You have to just not be someone who's sending 100 cold emails or, just calling constantly because that's what everyone is doing. So just doing something
Yep.
different. Because your company is different. It's bigger. It's interesting. It's different than anything else. So you might as well make your marketing different as well. Um, I think you kind of talked a lot about making sure that your product is really usable. So when you think about legal tech and making it really relatable, what is some advice that you would give to other founders in the legal tech industry about breaking in and making their tech more relatable for their consumer?
I mean, I think one of the biggest things I see is so many people building product and not actually being in front of attorneys, or
Mhm.
building something they think attorneys want. But when you actually watch the sessions, especially if you're not looking over their shoulder,
Yeah.
you'll notice like these angry clicks and
Yeah.
people just confused. And you also have to put yourself in the seat of these folks. If I'm a paralegal and it's Friday afternoon, I just want to get out of the office. I'm there, I'm trying to get done. And so how can you streamline that and make it really, really easy for them? And it's not with some, beautiful product that, solves all these things. I mean, what's really interesting is one of the big advantages for our platform is we deliver work product in the form of a Word doc or a PDF. And that may sound really silly for folks, but the reality is that's what a lot of these attorneys live in. So this idea that, oh, no, we could add a feature that inside of our web interface allows you to filter and do it. They're like, no. I don't want that. Because here's the deal. I got to take this deposition summary, print it out, put it in a binder. So this attorney over here can take a highlighter to it.
Right.
And we may not work like that, but guess what? That's how they work. And that's the most important thing. And I think people miss that when they're building products. And so I think we'll always try to lean into how can we delight the customers, not only with how easy it is, but with how easy it is to get in touch with us, not just the AI, but like talk to a person at CaseMark. And I think, that's a differentiator in the market. And so, advice wise, I would say talk to some actual attorneys, some paralegals, some people practicing who are going through this. And honestly, it's the folks who are, I'll say I don't want to say the bottom rung of the ladder because that sounds bad, but people who are new into, law, are grinding and learning like crazy. They're the ones who sort of have the capacity or willingness to want to sort of share if they can. And then I think, longer term, we're going to see this evolution of the law firm itself. I think it's going to change over the next decade. I don't know where it's going to go, but it's definitely going to be an opportunity for younger attorneys to be able to build and carve out their own, practices much easier and faster than it is like trying to fight tooth and nail to get that partnership at a law firm, over the long haul.
Yeah, well, you're kind of talking a little bit about behavior, and asking someone to change behavior is like getting people to change their general behavior is so hard. So what you're saying is instead of asking them to change every element of their behavior, of like how they use these documents, it's like let's let them highlight still, because that's not going to be something they're going to want to change. Let's just like do this one little thing of how they actually process the data, and then everything else can stay the same. And that's really smart, because I don't think that you're going to get some of these attorneys who have been, doing law for 40 or 50 years to put their highlighters down and like log into an account. Yeah, that's pretty good advice. Well, if you were going back to give yourself advice when you were just starting CaseMark, is there anything that you would do differently, or is there anything that you wish you could have told yourself when you were starting out?
I mean, not really. I mean, the reality is every company I've started, if I had known what I know now, what I knew then, I probably wouldn't have started it. And I think that's actually one of the reasons why most people don't start companies is they think or I shouldn't say they think they know too much. They think they know that they know so much about the space that they think that it'd be really, really hard to do. And it is hard, don't get me wrong. But if you can just find that one thing, that one little beachhead, that one little hook, like in our case with deposition summaries, when I took that out and started, trying to raise money on a seed round, or pre-seed last year at this time, folks were like, yeah, but deposition summaries aren't a big business. So I'm like, yeah, I know. Absolutely. But what we're proving are these easy buttons, and we'll figure it out from there. Right. But what we do have is people are clicking that easy button a lot for deposition summaries. So can we make them click more across this entire litigation lifecycle? And so, that's the leap that I think a lot of folks don't make. And then we've just kind of been, building this sort of, vision for the, where we get with full case automation over time. And then the question is, cool, you have this vision out here. The magic is in how you get from here, the sort of crawl to the walk and then to the run. And it's this big, crazy, long, circuitous path to get there. Although, unfortunately, the way that it's always, painted in the media is like, oh, brilliance every step of the way. And it's like, no, it's really hard. And we kind of trip over ourselves, trying to figure this stuff out. But, sometimes you get lucky and sometimes you don't. But even can you take the times that you step backwards as a chance to potentially move the business forward? Because a step backwards, could be because you read the market wrong, and that's actually a good sign. So now you can tweak and rethink what you're doing.
Right. The obstacle is the way, right? Like there's always a solution to every problem. There's always some kind of solution. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show, Scott. It's been really great speaking with you. Can you tell people where to find CaseMark and where to find you online?
Absolutely. So we're just casemark.com. We did get that .com domain, and
Nice.
you
I'm
can
sure
find us
that
on
was a thing.
LinkedIn, and then I'm just Scott at or sorry, Scott at casemark.com. Feel free to reach out if you have any questions or want to learn more.
Amazing. Well, definitely follow Scott on LinkedIn because it sounds like he's posting some crazy stuff these days. And
Definitely.
thank you to everyone at home or on the go for listening. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please make sure to subscribe, share it with a friend, or leave us a review. And if there's anything you'd like to hear on an upcoming episode, just let us know. For more insights and stories, please follow us on LinkedIn or visit rightleftagency.com. And we'll be back next time with more stories of success, innovation, and marketing strategies to help you grow. See you on the next one.